I need like a little mirror. Here we go. Okay, so as some of you guys know, I have a whole horde of animals. I have 4 dogs and a kitten. One of my dogs, Doug, he's just crazy. When I first adopted him, I actually adopted him with my stimulus check. I got him back in 2021, back in like April. He was a couple months old. His birthday is December 24th, and he's just adorable. I was told he was a golden doodle mix. I don't think that that's true, which is fine because he's just adorable anyway. And I have 2 golden retrievers and a Newfie doodle. So whatever, it doesn't matter what he is or isn't. But he came to me when I brought him home. He was so adorable and just little and just a typical puppy. And just playful with the other dogs. He just fit in so well, but he's just so unique. Like his personality is unique, and he doesn't have a tail. They cut his tail off, and so he's just got this little nub that just wags like so fast, and it's just freaking adorable. I'll post a picture of him, probably some videos. He's been on the channel. Anyway, so when I brought him home, I was doing a full mom inspection of him, and he was rolling around on his back, and I saw what looked like a scab. And so I looked at it a little bit closer, and it was not a scab. It was in fact a tick. Now, I live in Utah. I live in a little bit of the country, but not like the woods or anything. I don't have like farm animals or any of that stuff, but he did come from a more rural town north of me. So when I realized it was a tick, obviously I freaked the out because vomit, gross, that's just nasty. I obviously freaked out, and so I started checking his whole body. Obviously went on Google and I checked for where ticks typically go on dogs. Long story short, I probably found anywhere from 40 to 50 ticks that I had to remove off of his body. I did the tick baths. I took him to the vet and, made sure that we didn't have to worry about like Lyme disease, because at the time that was the only one that I had ever heard of as being an issue correlating to ticks. Any type of ticks was Lyme disease. So fast forward, the vet says, don't worry about it, he'll be okay. That's not really something we worry about here. So obviously, as somebody who has no medical experience whatsoever, I'm going to take the vet's opinion and run with that and just assume that they know what they're talking about. A couple months later, he's never been a whiny dog or a whiny puppy. He was never very, he would bark, but he was never he didn't whine a lot or cry a lot. One day he was doing the splooting thing where they kick their back legs out and they just stretch out, and he was crying. He wasn't eating, and then when he did eat, he was vomiting everywhere. So this is, I don't remember how old he was when this was all happening, but rushed him to the ER vet, and he ate a rock. Yeah, no, he ate a whole rock, not a small rock either. It was probably the size of, $50 size. I don't know. It was huge. I saved it. It was the most expensive thing I've ever paid for. Obviously, they gave us 2 options. They said, you can either wait for him to try and pass the rock, or we can remove the rock. Well, obviously, he's not been able to pass the rock because he's been vomiting and not pooping. And so, a couple $1,000s later, we've got a very, very expensive rock. Okay, cool. We're good. So we go some time without any, little hiccups or anything like that as far as Doug goes. Other dogs, that's a different story. And fast forward to New Year's Eve 2023. I was woken up to him having a full-blown seizure. Not like a little seizure, but just an absolute, like, freak you out because you're in the dead of sleep seizure. And it was in the middle of the like morning. It was like 3:30 in the morning. I'm all by myself and I'm freaking out. And it was just the craziest and scariest thing because first of all, I'm being woken up in the middle of the night. And second of all, I have no idea what the heck was going on. So that happened and it felt like it lasted forever when in reality it was probably like 1.5 to 2.5 minutes long, but it was so intense and he comes out of it and he's just completely confused. I'm confused. He's peed on himself. He's pooped everywhere. There's foam coming out of his mouth. I mean, it was like traumatizing. I've seen people have seizures before, at work, but I've never it's never been someone that I cared about or was close to me or one of my babies. Because as you will learn, my dogs are near and dear to my heart and I would do anything for them. Same with my kitten and obviously same with my child, but my dogs definitely hold a special place in my heart. So fast forward. He has another seizure about a month later and that was just as scary as the first one. And it again was in the middle of the night. The same thing. It's the best way to describe the seizures is it's like he is laying down on his side trying to run, and his mouth locks open and it's just traumatic for everybody. It's traumatic for him. It's traumatic for me. You know, the other dogs that witness it, mainly Bruce, he doesn't understand what's going on. So obviously, I mean, I did more research on like not what's acceptable because I don't feel like any type of activity like this is acceptable, but for dogs to have seizures, it's a little bit more common than people realize. So obviously I Google like the frequency of the seizures and I think it said something like 2 to 3 a year is okay and it's not something to be too concerned about. So I placed a call to our new vet, not the one that I had taken him to when he had the tics. And I expressed the concern that I have. And of course they want to run some blood tests. So I take him in and she runs full blood panel on him. She also had this like spare test for something called Ehrlichia. I had never heard of that before. So she tested him for that as well. So when his blood work came back, she told me that his platelet levels were pretty low and that he tested positive for Ehrlichia. So obviously I'm just like, okay, cool. So what the is Ehrlichia? Like, I've never even heard of that in my life. She's like, well, it comes from ticks. And I'm just like, son of a... Because I'm like, oh, cool. So this is possibly something that could have been treated when he was a puppy, when I took him to the first vet. So I'm like irritated, I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, but I'm also mom, so I have to just deal with it. So she had given me a range of what was normal for his platelets, and when she told me the number that he was at and where he should have been, it was like a drastic difference to me. She didn't seem too concerned about it, so again, I went with what she was telling me and whatever. She had told me, all the different options for what we could give him to help him with the seizures. I'm the kind of person where I'd rather start at the bottom and like do the least invasive and the least harsh type of treatment and work our way up to something like that's stronger because I don't want him to be high all the time. I want him to have a good life and be aware and not be drowsy. I mean, I know he doesn't want to be that way. He's just a little puppy. Like, he's not a puppy. He's 3 years old, but whatever. He's a puppy in my heart. We started with the lowest thing that would supposedly affect him. And then we also started steroids to increase his platelet levels back up. and then an antibiotic for the Ehrlichia. Well, so that combination of everything just made him look like a zombie dog. So we did some altering and changing and switching things up. He had a couple more seizures in that time, and we changed his antibiotics, and we changed the dosing on the steroids. And then we also put him on a different medicine for the seizures. I had to take him, I want to say, every 2 weeks to get his blood drawn to check his platelet levels, because the thing that's scary about the platelets is that's what clots his blood. So if something happened, if he got a cut or something, there's a potential that he could like bleed out because his body is not producing the platelets that makes the blood clot so that it turns into a scab. So obviously I was paranoid about that. I'm paranoid about the Ehrlichia, and then the seizures are coming and going, and it's just a whole mess. So I took him back one of the times for the platelet checkup, and it had dropped even more. So of course I freak out. I'm in like crisis over him and his platelet levels dropping, and I'm just like, oh my, like what is going on? Why is this happening? Like, why is this happening to him? We got that all fixed. We got it all figured out. His platelet levels went back up, and he's definitely a pro at getting his blood drawn. So anyway, he came back and didn't have any more Ehrlichia antibodies. So I was like, awesome. We don't have to keep him on the antibiotics anymore. We don't have to do the steroids anymore. We just have this new seizure medicine that he has to be on for at least 6 months without a seizure. So his last seizure was in May, beginning of May. And I keep them all in a note on my phone because, again, I'm a mom, I'm a paranoid freak. So it helps me remember when he's had all of them. So he hadn't had one since May. And so the doctor had told me, or the vet had told me, he had to go 6 months on the medication without a seizure. So I was just like, awesome. So we've got like an end date in sight. Like, this is going to be great. And then we'll be able to wean him off the medicine, and then he'll be, good as new. And it's going to be great. Like, he's not going to have to be on any medication anymore. So fast forward from May until August, he had another seizure in the middle of the night again. Same thing, just extremely, like, I don't want to say powerful, but it's just so intense. Like, the seizure feels so intense for him, and his whole body is just tense, and it's just heartbreaking because it's not like he's a human to where I can be like, it's going to be okay. I mean, obviously I'm saying that anyway. But he doesn't necessarily understand it. And so it's really sad. It's really sad. So he had a seizure at the beginning of August. Obviously I added it to my notes. And then a week later, he had another one, again, in the middle of the night. So I called the vet again, and I just told her, like, what was going on. So she had me bring him back in to get his blood work checked again to make sure that his platelet levels were okay. She tested his blood. She said, everything looks good. And she said, we're going to up his dose on the seizure medicine. So obviously in my brain, I'm just like, okay, so what's causing the seizures? Because at first we thought it was the Ehrlichia or the platelets. I'm not entirely sure. So what's causing these? And she basically said he's basically just epileptic. So she said, if we can not have any breakthrough seizures for, an extended period of time, we can visit the idea of taking him off of the medicine for the seizures. But in my mind, it's just, it's like somebody who has anxiety or, has to take a medicine for their blood pressure, and they take the medicine, they resolve the problem, and they're like, oh, I feel great. Now I can come off of the medication, and then it all starts over again. And I'm like, I don't want to do that to him. I don't want to do that to me. It's just heartbreaking to watch him go through this. Like, I just wish that I could take it from him. She says, let's up his medicine and let's give that a try. And then, he's on the lowest dose possible right now. So if we bump him up, it's not going to be too harsh on him. So I'm like, okay, I can get on board with that. So we bump up the medication. And that was actually a week ago today that I took him in to get the blood rechecked. Tuesday, in the middle of the day, he had another seizure while I was at work. And it was caught on camera. Like, it was just a whole thing. So obviously I'm like, what the heck's going on? Like, this medicine was supposed to fix it. This medicine was supposed to make it better. So it is what it is. I'm thinking his body just has to regulate itself and has to figure it out. So we're going to give it some time. The next day, which was yesterday, he had another seizure while I was at work at about 10:30 in the morning. Again, caught on camera. And I think this is probably the first time that he's had a seizure around all of the other dogs, because they definitely did not know how to act. One of the golden retrievers was thinking that he was playing and was like jumping around him. And the whole thing was just like super heartbreaking, and kind of like disheartening, because he was supposed to be doing better on like the higher dose of the medicine, and he's not. So we called the vet again, and they called me back and said, the doctor wants to change his medicine again to the stronger controlled substance. So obviously I'm again freaking out. I'm in crisis. I have to call my mom and just talk to her. This is all happening while I'm at work, and I'm trying to focus at work, and I'm trying to keep it together because I still have part of my day to work. And that's not to say that my coworkers aren't amazing and supportive people. Not everyone in the world thinks of their dogs like I do. Now, granted, all of the people I work with do, and I appreciate that, but it just sucks, because obviously I start looking into it, and it's like, okay, so what if this medicine doesn't work? What if these breakthrough seizures keep happening while he's on this medicine? And this stuff is like, it's really strong. And so obviously I'm hopeful that it works, and hopefully he doesn't have any more seizures. But, obviously I start looking into what the next step is, because I'd rather have an idea of what like my possible options are. And of course, one of the things that comes up is like, if the seizures continue to where it's not manageable, there's the possibility of having to put him down. Which I don't want him to suffer, but I just can't even think about it. So anyway, I went to the vet and I picked up his new medication. I'm sorry, I'm just a whole mess right now about this. So I went to the vet, picked up the medicine, asked her a bunch of questions on like, what if this medication doesn't work? She said there are some options of doing more than one medicine at a time for him. Obviously, we don't want to do that right now because we don't want him to be back to zombie dog. So let's just cross our fingers and hope that this stuff works, because he's just my little buddy. So anyway, that's kind of Doug's story on what he's gone through in his life. So we started the new medication last night and this morning, obviously, and like you can already tell a difference. Like, he's definitely more drowsy. So if you have any tips or suggestions on dealing with seizures in dogs, put them in the comments, because I am definitely open to trying other things if I need to make sure that he is okay and safe and as comfortable as he can be. Sorry for the sad story time. Hopefully you guys like the video. Like and subscribe, hit the notification button, and maybe I'll have some more happy stories to talk about in the future about my puppies and Doug and all of that kind of stuff.